Story time! 2 years ago, I was completing my last year in high school where I studied art. And for the exam project, I wrote about Edgar Degas and made a statue out of concrete. We had about 2 months for the whole project, and the first week was just testing and sketching to figure out what works. I knew I wanted to make a ballerina tying her shoes, but I didn't know what position she would be in. The two positions that people usually sit in to tie their shoes is this and this. I got my brother to take pictures and measure me so I would have a 360 reference and measurements so it would be an exact replica of me but in 1/3 size. I then sketched in clay the two poses and decided to go for the sitting one. I also sketched other factors that I had to figure out, like the point shoes, tutu, and other shapes. Then begins the process of shaping, adding clay, removing clay, measuring, and spraying with water, so it eventually becomes a ballerina. After a long process of this, I ended up with a little clay ballerina. Then came the dilemma of having only 3 weeks left until the art exhibition to either chill and really nitpick, or work super hard to make the sculpture in concrete. Being stubborn and a little crazy, I chose the latter one. In order to make the sculpture in concrete, I needed to make a plaster mold of the clay sculpture. I started outlining it with rectangle cutouts from old soda cans to make a wall that will separate the front and back piece. I then had to make the plaster mixture and throw it onto the sculpture to prevent air bubbles and get the mixture as close to the form as possible. When I had the first layer down, I filled it with more plaster to support the cast. At this point, it looked like a giant turtle shell on a small ballerina. Then I repeated the process on the front, but had to split it into 2 parts, right under where the skirt hits. For every new part, I had to make some holes and brush the edges with a mixture of soap and oil. This way, the pieces wouldn't be stuck to each other. Now I had an egg shape with some legs and an arm sticking out. For the last part, I put plaster directly on the wooden board the sculpture was on and kept building so it would connect to the other parts. The arm and leg that are sticking out had to be made as a separate part. I made a clay funnel to make sure the concrete would reach the arm before I put plaster on it. I made it in gray clay to not confuse where the original sculpture was. When all plaster parts had dried, came the terrifying yet exciting part, taking the pieces off. I had to carefully pick with chisel and hammer until I got the pieces apart. I knew the risk of the clay sculpture not making it, so the new goal was just to make the cast good. Now came the part to piece them together again and put rolls of plaster to glue the parts together. I secured it with duct tape and plastic wrap. Finally, it was time to cast in concrete. I put a bag of clay in the sink as support of the upside down mold. I brushed the inside with the same soap mixture from earlier. Then I geared up with glasses, mask, and hearing protection to go mix up a batch of concrete. Between each little pour of the concrete, I used a popsicle stick to pop air bubbles as well as shaking the mold and get concrete in every crevice. I also made a cardboard funnel to extend the funnel part from earlier, which helped to cast the arm. When the concrete had dried, I made my mom pick me up to bring it home to dig out the statue. I literally sat on the floor in the hallway and carefully chiseled in the plaster. I sat for 3 days with pure will and determination to be done before the upcoming art exhibition. The arm sadly fell off, but I gorilla glued it back on. Some of the plaster was still stuck to the statue, but it looked cool. And voila! That's how I made my exam project. I'm so impressed I was able to do it. I got so much help from my teacher and my parents. I couldn't have done it without them. There were a lot of problems that popped up during this, but the ending result paid off the hard work. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in this video. If you are looking forward to my upcoming projects and other story times, make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you get a notification on when that is. And comment down below your thoughts on this project. And until next time, take care and I'll see you. Bye!